The most expensive wedding mistake my family ever made wasn't the $38,000 bill. It was telling me I wasn't invited. I flew 18 hours to attend my sister's wedding. I had spent months helping her plan everything. I signed the vendor contracts, covered the deposits, solved every last-minute problem without ever asking for credit. But when I arrived at the venue, my own parents blocked the entrance. "Only family is allowed," my mother said. Then she looked me straight in the eyes and added, "You weren't invited." I stood there holding the wedding gift I'd wrapped the night before, watching my family walk inside without me. No explanation. No apology. Just humiliation. I turned around and left without saying a word. 3 days later my phone rang. The wedding venue wanted its money. The bill was overdue. $38,000. And suddenly, the same family who couldn't find room for me at the wedding couldn't stop begging for my help. When my sister announced her wedding date, I was genuinely happy for her. Despite our differences over the years, she was still my sister. And when she asked for help planning the wedding, I didn't hesitate. For months I helped however I could. I reviewed vendor contracts, solved last-minute problems, even covered a few unexpected expenses when things became stressful. Nobody forced me. I did it because I loved my family. A few weeks before the ceremony, I received the final wedding schedule. Everything seemed normal. Nothing suggested there was a problem. So when the wedding weekend arrived, I boarded a plane and spent nearly 18 hours traveling. I was exhausted by the time I reached the venue. But I was excited. I had brought a wedding gift. I had taken time off work. And I couldn't wait to see my sister get married. The moment I walked toward the entrance, everything changed. My parents stepped directly in front of me. At first I thought they were greeting me. Then I noticed the expressions on their faces. Neither of them looked happy to see me. My mother folded her arms. My father avoided eye contact. Before I could say a word, my mother spoke. "You shouldn't be here." I laughed nervously. "What are you talking about?" She didn't laugh back. "Only invited family can attend." For several seconds I just stared at her, certain I had misunderstood. Then my father quietly added the words that shattered everything. "You weren't invited." As guests continued entering behind them, I realized this wasn't a misunderstanding. They were serious. And somehow everyone except me had known it. I don't remember much about the drive back to my hotel. Only the feeling. The feeling of being completely blindsided. I kept replaying the scene in my head. My parents blocking the entrance. My father's silence. My mother's cold expression. And the realization that my own sister had allowed it to happen. The next morning I woke up hoping it had all been some misunderstanding. Maybe emotions had been running high. Maybe there was a mistake with the guest list. But then the wedding photos started appearing online. Hundreds of smiling faces. Family portraits. Group pictures. Celebration after celebration. My parents looked happy. My sister looked happy. Nobody looked like they had just excluded a family member. What hurt most wasn't being left out. It was seeing how easily everyone moved on without me. As the photos continued appearing, old memories started resurfacing. This wasn't the first time my sister had been treated differently. Growing up, she was always the favorite. If she made mistakes, excuses appeared. If I made mistakes, consequences followed. Whenever sacrifices were needed, I somehow became the volunteer. And somehow I had convinced myself things would be different this time. That family would finally matter more than favoritism. Clearly I was wrong. Still, I didn't call anyone. I didn't post online. I didn't start an argument. Instead, I focused on getting back to my normal life. If my family wanted distance, I decided to give them exactly that. 3 days passed. Then on a quiet Tuesday afternoon my phone rang. The caller ID showed my mother's name. For a moment I considered ignoring it. After everything that happened, I wasn't interested in another lecture. Then I answered. The panic in her voice told me immediately that something had gone very, very wrong. The moment I answered, my mother started talking so fast I could barely understand her. At first, I thought someone had gotten hurt. Then I heard the word, venue. And suddenly I paid attention. Apparently there was a problem. A very expensive problem. The wedding venue was demanding immediate payment for an outstanding balance. Not a few $100s. Not even a few thousand. The remaining amount was nearly $38,000. My mother sounded desperate. My father got on the phone next. Then my sister. For the first time in days, everyone suddenly wanted to talk to me. What surprised me most wasn't the unpaid bill. It was their assumption. They genuinely believed I would solve it. My sister immediately started explaining how stressful everything had been. My mother reminded me that family helps family. My father said everyone was counting on me. Counting on me? The same people who wouldn't let me enter the wedding? The same people who told me I wasn't invited? I stayed quiet and let them talk. The longer they spoke, the clearer everything became. Somewhere along the way, my family had convinced themselves I would cover the cost if something went wrong. Not because I agreed to, but as I always had before. Whenever emergencies appeared, I stepped in. Whenever someone needed help, I found a solution. This time was different. When they finally stopped talking, I asked a simple question. Why would you expect me to pay for a wedding I wasn't allowed to attend? Silence. Complete silence. Then my mother said something that shocked me. She admitted they had assumed I would help anyway. That's when I laughed. Not because the situation was funny. Because they still didn't understand one very important detail. A detail that would change the entire conversation. And leave my family completely speechless. The detail my family didn't know was surprisingly simple. I had never signed anything. Not the final venue agreement. Not the payment guarantee. Nothing. Months earlier, when I was still helping with the planning, the venue manager had repeatedly asked who would be legally responsible for any remaining balance. I wasn't comfortable taking that responsibility, so I declined. At the time, nobody seemed concerned. Apparently, they assumed they would never need to think about it again. Now they were discovering exactly why those documents mattered. When I explained this, my mother immediately started arguing. She insisted I had been involved in the planning. I agreed. She said I had helped organize everything. I agreed again. Then I reminded her of one important fact. Helping with a wedding doesn't create a legal obligation to pay for it. Especially after being excluded from it. That conversation ended quickly. But the consequences were only beginning. Within hours, relatives started calling. Not because they wanted to help. Because they wanted answers. Word was spreading. People were learning that I had contributed months of work, traveled across the country, and then been turned away at the entrance. The reaction wasn't what my parents expected. For the first time, family members started questioning them instead of me. My sister became furious. She blamed my parents for creating the situation. My parents blamed her for removing me from the guest list. Everyone seemed to be looking for someone else to blame. Everyone except the venue. The venue simply wanted payment. By the second day, tensions had become impossible to hide. Arguments were breaking out everywhere. Then late that evening, I received another call. This time, nobody was demanding money. Nobody was making excuses. For the first time, my family was asking for something entirely different. Forgiveness. And they sounded genuinely desperate. A few days later, I agreed to meet my family. Not because I was ready to forget what happened. Because I wanted closure. When I arrived, the atmosphere felt completely different from the wedding weekend. Nobody was angry. Nobody was defensive. For the first time, everyone looked embarrassed. My father spoke first. He admitted they had treated me unfairly. My mother followed. She confessed that excluding me had been a terrible mistake. Then my sister started crying. Not dramatic tears. Real ones. She apologized for removing me from the guest list. She admitted she had allowed pressure and favoritism to influence her decisions. Listening to them wasn't easy. Part of me wanted to stay angry. After everything that happened, that would have been understandable. But another part of me knew something important. Forgiveness doesn't mean pretending nothing happened. It means deciding the hurt won't control your future. Then came the question everyone was waiting for. Would I help pay the remaining wedding balance? I took a deep breath. And said no. Not out of revenge. Not out of spite. Because some lessons need consequences. I explained that respect isn't something people can remove when it's convenient and expect back when they need help. To their credit, nobody argued. They accepted my decision. Over the following months, relationships slowly improved. Trust took time. But honesty helped. Looking back, the unpaid bill was never the real issue. The real issue was gratitude. My family spent years assuming I would always be there. The wedding taught them something they had forgotten. People aren't obligations. People are relationships. And if you don't value them when they matter, you may not get a second chance when you finally do. That lesson cost my family far more than $38,000. Sometimes the people who take you for granted don't realize your value until they need you most. Respect, loyalty, and gratitude should never be conditional. If this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more emotional family stories with powerful twists and satisfying endings. And tell me in the comments, would you have forgiven your family after everything they did?